November 3rd, 2026, 11:22, local time. The South China Sea, approximately 340 nautical miles southeast of the Chinese island of Hainan and 290 nautical miles northwest of the Philippine island of Luzon. The late morning sky is clear at altitude, scattered cumulus at 8,000 feet, visibility unlimited above 3,000 feet, wind 12 knots from the northeast. The sea surface is a deep blue, sea state 3, occasional whitecaps. There is no commercial vessel traffic in this area today. The People's Liberation Army Navy issued a notice to mariners 7 days ago, establishing a temporary exclusion zone covering a 200 nautical mile radius around the coordinates 17.4 degrees north, 116.8 degrees east, citing a military exercise of unspecified nature and duration. All commercial and civilian maritime traffic has been routed around the zone. At the center of that exclusion zone, a target is floating. The structure is 330 meters long, 78 meters wide, and rides on a steel barge hull that draws 8 meters of water. From an altitude of 10,000 feet, it is unmistakable. It has been constructed to replicate, with dimensional accuracy, the flight deck profile of a Gerald R. Ford-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. The same 333-meter overall length, the same angled flight deck geometry, the same island superstructure silhouette, the same radar cross-section profile that a naval targeting sensor would return from a range of 300 kilometers. The structure has been welded to 4 barge hulls, anchored to the South China Sea floor by heavy chain moorings. It has been instrumented with an array of pressure sensors, accelerometers, and high-speed cameras. It is not going anywhere. It has been positioned here for 11 days, and in approximately 8 minutes, it will absorb the impact of a DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missile traveling at Mach 10. This event is not classified. The PLAAF has invited 17 foreign military attachés to observe the engagement from a designated observation area 85 nautical miles to the northwest. The observation area is equipped with 2 elevated viewing platforms, high-resolution telescopes, and a real-time data display showing the missile's flight track from launch to impact. The invitation list included the naval attachés of Japan, South Korea, Australia, the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, India, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and 4 additional nations whose specific identities are not publicly confirmed. The United States Naval Attaché to Beijing was not invited. The United States government learned of the exercise through signals intelligence collection 72 hours before the launch date. Welcome. I'm your host at Navy Legends. Tonight, we are examining the single most strategically significant military event in the Western Pacific since China's first anti-satellite weapon test in 2007, the live-fire demonstration of the DF-21D carrier-killer ballistic missile against a full-scale carrier-profile target in the South China Sea, conducted in deliberate view of allied and partner nation. Military observers, with full instrumentation to document and publicize the results. This is not a test of the weapon's technical capability. The DF-21D's technical capability has been assessed by DIA since 2010 as credible against carrier-sized surface targets. This is a demonstration, a carefully choreographed strategic communication designed to answer a specific question that every U.S. Pacific ally has been asking since the Taiwan Strait crisis began escalating in August 2026. If conflict comes, will an American aircraft carrier actually be able to operate within range of the Chinese mainland? Tonight, we examine what the answer looks like from the observation platform 85 nautical miles northwest, what it looks like from the Pentagon's crisis response room, and what it looks like from the capitals of the 17 nations whose attachés were standing at those telescopes. This is a fictional simulation of a real threat system. Every technical parameter described is grounded in the open source and declassified assessment record. Let's begin. The DF-21D, NATO reporting name, CSS-5 Mod 4, is a medium-range ballistic missile specifically designed and marketed by the PLA Rocket Force as an anti-ship weapon capable of engaging carrier-sized surface targets at ranges of up to 1,500 kilometers. It uses a maneuvering re-entry vehicle equipped with a terminal guidance seeker, assessed as combining active radar and passive infrared homing that can acquire and track a carrier-sized surface contact in the terminal phase and execute lateral corrections of up to 40 kilometers to compensate for target movement during the missile's flight time. Its warhead is assessed as a conventional penetrating munition in the 500 to 600 kilogram class, specifically designed to penetrate a carrier's flight deck and detonate inside the ship's hangar or below deck spaces, where maximum structural and aviation asset damage would be achieved. The targeting solution for this engagement had been provided by 3 enabling systems working in coordination. The first was an over-the-horizon radar installation on the Paracel Islands. The Type 4 AOTHB radar that the PLA had been operating from a facility on Woody Island since 2020, providing surface track data on the target barge's position and confirming its stationary status. The second was a high-altitude reconnaissance drone at 18,000 meters altitude, transmitting continuous optical and synthetic aperture radar imagery of the target barge with a positional accuracy better than 2 meters. The third was a submarine-deployed acoustic transponder on the seabed below the target barge. A device emplaced by a planned Type 039B submarine 9 days earlier that was transmitting a precise GPS coordinate reference signal to the DF-21D's guidance system during the terminal phase via an encrypted acoustic uplink. The 3-system targeting architecture had been developed specifically to address the DF-21D's most challenging technical problem: that a ballistic missile with a flight time of 12 to 16 minutes against a 1,500 kilometer target must compensate for the distance a moving target travels during flight. Against a carrier making 30 knots, a 14-minute flight time translates to 11.5 nautical miles of target movement. Well within the maneuvering re-entry vehicle's 40-kilometer correction capability, but requiring an accurate targeting update within the final 90 seconds of flight. The submarine transponder solved this by providing a precise geographic anchor point that the re-entry vehicle could use as a terminal reference, regardless of whether the surface targeting sensor was experiencing any degradation. Against a stationary target, all 3 systems were redundant. The barge was not going anywhere. The demonstration's targeting architecture was not designed for the stationary barge. It was designed to be documented, observed, and understood by the 17 attachés watching from 85 nautical miles away as the system that would be used against a moving carrier. The DF-21D launched at 11:10 from a mobile TEL vehicle positioned at the PLA Rocket Force garrison at Guangshui, Hubei Province, 1,380 kilometers from the target barge. The launch was detected by the USS BIRS satellite at 11:10:08. The track characterization as a DF-21D was completed at 11:11:44. The alert reached Indopacom at 11:11:51. The 17 foreign military attachés at the observation platform saw the launch as a contrail appearing above the northern horizon at 11:10:22. 22 seconds after launch, as the missile cleared 40 kilometers altitude and its exhaust became visible at long range in the clear November sky. At the observation platform, a PLA information officer provided a running commentary in Mandarin with simultaneous translation in English, Japanese, and Korean. The commentary provided the missile's current altitude, speed, and time to impact with clinical precision at 30-second intervals. It was the most unusual military briefing any of the attachés had attended in their careers. A live, real-time tactical engagement narrated by the adversary conducting it, for an audience assembled specifically to observe and report on its success. The DF-21D's boost phase completed at 11:11:30. The maneuvering re-entry vehicle separated from the booster at 70 kilometers altitude at a velocity of Mach 14. It began its atmospheric re-entry descent at 11:11:30, decelerating to Mach 10 as it entered the denser atmosphere below 40 kilometers. At 11:17:44, 7 minutes and 44 seconds after launch, the re-entry vehicle's active radar seeker acquired the target barge at a range of 340 kilometers. The barge was stationary, presenting the full 330-meter broadside profile to the seeker's acquisition geometry. The return was unambiguous. The seeker locked within 0.3 seconds of acquisition. The PLA information officer at the observation platform announced, "Terminal phase seeker acquisition confirmed. Time to impact, 4 minutes and 18 seconds. 4 minutes and 18 seconds. The observation platform fell silent. The re-entry vehicle descended through 22 kilometers at 11:19:11, executing a series of 8-degree lateral corrections that the PLA information officer described as demonstrating the vehicle's maneuvering capability. The sequence that would, against a moving carrier, be tracking and matching the target's course and speed changes in real time. Against the stationary barge, the corrections were maneuver demonstrations with no tactical necessity. They were performed for the observation record at 11:20:44. Time to impact 2 minutes 18 seconds. The re-entry vehicle descended through 12 kilometers at Mach 8.1. The PLA information officer stated the current target bearing, speed, and altitude. The observation platform's telescopes tracked the re-entry vehicle as a brilliant white streak in the clear sky, growing visibly larger at 30-second intervals. At 11:22:17, time to impact 45 seconds. The re-entry vehicle was at 3.4 kilometers altitude, descending on a 74-degree dive angle at Mach 7.4. The PLA information officer stopped speaking. The commentary had ended. The impact would speak for itself. At 11:22:31.4, the DF-21D's maneuvering re-entry vehicle impacted the target barge at a point 14 meters aft of the midship transverse center line and 6 meters port of the keel center line, a CEP result of approximately 16 meters from the designated aim point, which had been the center of the simulated island superstructure on the barge's starboard side. The 580-kilogram penetrating warhead struck the barge's flight deck surface, a 25mm steel plate installed specifically to simulate the Ford-class carrier's actual flight deck armoring. At Mach 7.2, the warhead's hardened steel penetrator body drove through the 25mm deck plate in 0.003 seconds, continued through the 4.2-meter clear height of the simulated hangar deck space below, and detonated against the barge's primary structural frame at a depth of 6.1 meters below the flight deck surface. The detonation produced a fireball visible to the observation platform 85 nautical miles away. The high-speed cameras on the instrumented sections of the barge recorded the blast sequence at 10,000 frames per second. The pressure sensors recorded a peak overpressure of 340 bar at the detonation point, decaying to 18 bar at 12 meters from the center, 6 bar at 22 meters, and 2 bar at 40 meters. The structural accelerometers recorded a 14G shock loading transmitted through the barge's keel structure, equivalent in a real carrier to a shock event that would be transmitted through the ship's entire 100,000-ton hull. The target barge did not sink. It had been structurally reinforced to survive the impact and remain in place for post-strike inspection and instrumentation data recovery. But the structural damage to its flight deck section was comprehensive. The 25mm deck plate had been penetrated and peeled back across a 4.8-meter diameter around the entry point. The simulated hangar deck structures below the impact point had been destroyed across a 28-meter radius by the blast. The simulated below-deck piping and electrical runs installed on the barge's interior to represent carrier systems infrastructure had been destroyed across a 40-meter radius of the detonation point. The PLA information officer resumed speaking at 11:22:47, 15 seconds after impact. Confirmed impact. Impact point within designated engagement parameters. Post-strike assessment underway. This engagement demonstrates the integrated targeting capability of the Rocket Force's conventional deterrence architecture against large surface combatant targets at extended range. At the observation platform, the attachés were silent. The Japanese naval attaché, a rear admiral with 28 years of service, had been watching through a high magnification telescope. He lowered it slowly. He said nothing. He did not need to. The U.S. Pacific Fleet commander received the full engagement report at 11:41, 19 minutes after impact, via the intelligence channel that had been monitoring the exercise in real time. He convened an emergency assessment meeting at 12 o'clock. The meeting lasted 47 minutes. Its findings were transmitted to Indopacom, the Chief of Naval Operations, and the National Security Council by 1330. The assessment had 4 components. The first was the technical validation component. The DF-21D had demonstrated a CEP of 16 meters against a stationary carrier profile target at 1,380 kilometers range under optimal targeting conditions. 3 coordinated enabling systems. No electronic warfare interference. No defensive jamming. No evasive maneuvering by the target. Against a carrier making 30 knots with active electronic warfare jamming and coordinated defensive measures, the CEP would degrade. The assessment estimated a real-world CEP of 40 to 80 meters against a maneuvering defended carrier. A 40-meter CEP against a 333-meter target still represented a high probability of impact. The second was the demonstration audience component. 17 nations had watched. 14 of those nations had bilateral security relationships with the United States that, in a Taiwan conflict scenario, would involve requests for U.S. military assistance or basing access. Every one of those 14 governments now had a flag officer who had watched a DF-21D carrier killer strike a carrier profile target from 1,380 kilometers. The domestic political calculus in each of those capitals had shifted in a specific, measurable, and likely durable direction, not toward accommodation with China, but toward a more cautious assessment of the costs of hosting U.S. carriers in their ports or airspace if conflict erupted. This was the strategic purpose of the demonstration, not to communicate to the United States Navy, which already knew what the DF-21D could do, to communicate to the governments whose cooperation the United States Navy needed to operate in the Western Pacific, and to make that communication on the most visceral, visible, and undeniable terms available. The third component was the targeting architecture demonstration. The 3-system targeting solution, OTH, radar, high-altitude drone, submarine transponder, had been visible to every intelligence agency in the room. The submarine transponder was the element that most concerned the Pacific Fleet Assessment Team, because it represented a pre-positioned targeting asset that could be emplaced days before a conflict began. During the ambiguous period when a submarine's presence in international waters was not in itself an act of aggression and could not be interdicted without escalation, in a real Taiwan conflict scenario, planned submarines would have months of pre-conflict positioning time to emplace transponder networks across the carrier operating areas in the Philippine Sea and the Western Pacific approaches. Those transponders, combined with the OTH radar and drone targeting architecture demonstrated on November 3rd, would provide targeting accuracy against a carrier strike group comparable to what had been demonstrated against the stationary barge. The fourth component was the response options assessment. The United States possessed no equivalent conventional anti-ship ballistic missile capability in the Western Pacific theater. The closest analog, the land-based Tomahawk variant approved for deployment under the INF Treaty's withdrawal, was in early fielding stages with ranges insufficient to threaten Chinese mainland launch sites from safe standoff positions. The only certain counter to the DF-21D in the assessment team's finding was the prevention of launch, the destruction of TEL vehicles before they fired, and the pre-launch detection and characterization of the targeting architecture, specifically the submarine transponder network, before hostilities began. Both responses required the United States to act in the pre-conflict period, during the ambiguous phase when conflict had not yet been declared, against assets that were in international waters or on Chinese sovereign territory. Neither response was legally or politically straightforward. The NSC convened an emergency session at 2000 Washington time on November 3rd. The session produced 3 immediate decisions. First, the deployment of 2 additional Virginia-class fast attack submarines to the South China Sea and Philippine Sea to establish a persistent anti-submarine barrier across the most probable planned transponder emplacement corridors. Second, the emergency development of a shipborne directed energy system specifically designed to degrade the DF-21D's terminal phase radar seeker at ranges of 50 to 100 kilometers. A counter that would not defeat the missile physically, but would impose sufficient aim point error to move the impact point beyond carrier dimensions. Third, the establishment of a formal diplomatic channel to the 17 attaché nations, specifically addressing the DF-21D's capability limitations in a contested electromagnetic environment. A communication strategy designed to provide context to the visceral impact of what those attachés had witnessed. None of those three responses addressed the fundamental strategic communication that the demonstration had delivered. That the People's Republic of China had, in a 12-minute flight and a 16-meter CEP impact, demonstrated to the world that projecting American carrier power into the first island chain in defense of Taiwan carried a cost that had previously been theoretical and was now physically, visually, and instrumentally documented. The question of whether that cost was acceptable was not a military question. It was a political one. And the 17 flag officers who lowered their telescopes at 11:22:47 on November 3rd and turned to write their reports for their governments were the first of the many officials who would be asked to provide an answer. This is what Navy Legends has been building toward across this entire scenario series. The recognition that the most consequential weapons in a future Western Pacific conflict are not necessarily the ones that produce the largest explosions. They are the ones that change the political calculations of the governments whose decisions will determine whether conflict begins, escalates, or is contained. The DF-21D on November 3rd did not sink a carrier. It sank a certainty. The certainty that carrier power projection in the South China Sea and Philippine Sea would be conducted under the same strategic assumptions that had governed it since 1945. That is a different kind of damage. It does not appear in a damage control report. It does not show up in an engineering assessment. It shows up in a Japanese Rear Admiral's silence as he slowly lowers his telescope, in a South Korean Defense Ministry briefing the following morning, in a Philippines cabinet discussion about basing agreements, and in an Australian parliamentary session 2 weeks later, where a senator asks a question that nobody wants to answer directly. A DF-21D impacted a barge. The Warhead detonated 6.1 meters below the flight deck surface. The barge survived. The certainty did not. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. I'll see you in the next one.